Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about cells and why they divide. So we know that for an organism to remain alive, they must maintain homeostasis at all times. And to do that, they must carry out normal cell functions. And they must be able to, excuse me, get things in and out. And as these normal cell functions are happening, products are added to the cytoplasm, causing the cell to grow in size. So the cell volume will increase. Well, as we know, the cell volume will increase faster than the surface area or that cell membrane can handle. Therefore, at some point, the cell is faced with a whole divide or die situation. It could actually experience cytolysis or cell popping. So the cell does need to divide or die, like we just said, and normally the cell divides so that new cells can continue to form, grow, and carry out the functions that maintain the life of the organism. So the cell will divide, and then that cell will live its life, and then it divides, and it divides. And that's how organisms really grow in size. So each new cell that is formed must contain the same amount of DNA. As we talked about in our last chapter, every cell needs the same exact copy of DNA to survive so that every cell knows what to do. So the DNA within a cell needs to be replicated and then needs to be split between the two cells. The volume of the cell must also be cut in half so that there's room for substances to be added to the cytoplasm. We need organelles for each cell. We need a lot of different things to happen. So as you guys know, the structure of DNA is as follows. We have our DNA double helix, and then that DNA is wrapped around these proteins called histones. And then all this DNA is coiled and then supercoiled up to make a chromosome. So when we see a chromosome, okay, it is typically we see it and it looks like this X structure down here at the bottom. But in reality, it is not an X. We have up here, we have the DNA wrapped around the proteins called histones. We have it coiled up to make a chromosome. So a chromosome actually looks like a rod. So right here, this is one singular chromosome. However, we need to replicate the DNA before cell division. So we take this chromosome and we're going to make an exact copy of it. So here we see two identical chromosomes next to each other. Now, we want to keep these two identical copies together for organizational purposes. So there is a protein that we're going to stick right here, and that will stick these two sides together. So as you see it here, it looks like an X, but in reality, this center portion is a protein that is sticking the two identical sides together. So when you see a chromosome that looks like an X, it is actually a fully condensed replicated chromosome. There are two copies of the DNA right here. So it's often referred to as just a chromosome, but now you know that this is a replicated chromosome. Another name for this structure would be sister chromatids. So this is a chromatid, this is a chromatid. Together, they are sister chromatids. This side is a chromatid, this side is a chromatid. We stick them together with the protein in the middle called a centromere, and this is now a set of sister chromatids, or a replicated chromosome. And that's just important to understand because we're going to be dealing a lot with chromosomes splitting within the cell so that each cell that's formed gets its own copy of the DNA. So when we deal with mitosis in the cell cycle, cell division, also known as the cell cycle, is often called mitosis. However, mitosis is only just a section of the cell cycle or of cell division. There are three parts which we will be talking about. But mitosis, cell division, the cell cycle, is a type of cell reproduction in which a cell divides to form two identical cells. So this process is a cloning process. In higher multicellular sexually reproducing organisms like you and me, this is used to make our somatic or our body cells. So this will just create more body cells for us. But in lower unicellular organisms that reproduce asexually, mitosis is their form of reproduction. It is binary fission. So when one bacteria or bacterium, singular, divides, it forms two smaller bacteria. And an amoeba dividing will form two smaller amoeba. But when our cells divide this way, it just creates another body cell for us. So an overview of what this process looks like is as follows. So I'm just going to put all these up here. We have a cell. Say this is a skin cell. It has 46 chromosomes inside of it. We are going to, as the cell grows and does its normal cell processes, we are going to replicate our chromosomes. So for a short period of time, we have 92 chromosomes within our cells, because it's 46 replicated chromosomes. And then that 92 is going to split into 46 and 46. You can see that the cell starts to stretch, and then cytokinesis will happen where we have the actual division of the cell, and it goes bloop, and we get two identical cells that they both have 46 chromosomes. They're clones of each other. They are identical. The cell we started with does not exist anymore because it's split into these two cells, but these cells are identical to each other, and they are identical to the cell we started with, which technically no longer exists. If you change the chromosome number, it's the same exact process. So not all organisms have the same chromosome numbers. Humans are 46, but maybe a different species of organism has 20 chromosomes in a body cell. Well, that would replicate to 40 and then split back down into 20 and 20. And then the cytoplasm would split into 20 and 20 as well. These two cells are daughter cells. They're identical to each other, and they are identical to the cell we started with, which once again no longer exists because it's split. So here are the three parts of the cell cycle. We have interphase, we have mitosis, and then there's cytokinesis. So as you can see with the pie chart looking like thing over here on the side, interphase is a huge part of the cell cycle. During interphase, the cell is going through a growth period. It is doing all its normal cell processes, and it is definitely the longest part of the cycle. So it's actually split into three parts. You've got the G1 phase, growth 1. You've got the S phase, which stands for synthesis. And you've got the G2 phase, which is the growth 2 phase. So growth 1, normal cell processes. G1, in the S phase, we're synthesizing things. So we're replicating the DNA, we're replicating organelles. And in G2, we're really preparing to divide that final growth period before we move into what we call mitosis. Now, mitosis here you can see is split into 4. We've got prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. PMAT, P-M-A-T. And this is the division of the nucleus. So nucleus is going to disappear, and we're going to take the chromosomes and split them so that each new resulting cell has its own copy of DNA. And then the final part is cytokinesis, which will split that cytoplasm, like I said, that little bloop moment, and then the two resulting daughter cells, they go right into interphase, and this process will happen again. So if we look at our original image of the cell cycle, we have the beginning part of interphase, where the cell is growing and it's replicating its DNA, it's preparing to divide. Then we have mitosis, which is the splitting of the chromosomes, splitting of that nuclear material. And then the last part, we have cytokinesis, which is the splitting of the actual cytoplasm to form two identical daughter cells. So that really sets us up, explains, why cell division needs to happen, and I gave you a bit of an overview as to what we're going to be getting into when we start talking about the phases of mitosis and the cell cycle in general. So next we'll be going into looking at interphase, and then all of mitosis, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, and then what's happening in cytokinesis. So we'll pick up there next time.